You have full permission to create the life you want. You have full permission to experience pregnancy the way that you want to. You have full permission to ask for what you want from your provider, from your partner, from your family. You have full permission to do whatever, be whatever, have whatever. And it really is an invitation to step into your truth and your knowing, to get quiet with yourself and say, what is it that I actually want? What do I actually want to experience? And then detach from the outcome.
Hey everyone, you are listening to the Pelvic Pulse podcast. I am going to introduce you to our next guest, and this is Samantha Jo Harvey that you're going to be listening to. Sam is a former pro dancer and fitness expert turned soul activator, intuitive business mentor, and high performance coach, helping women unleash their power to create epic results and a life that feels fucking great. She's obsessed with helping women own their truth, trust themselves, activate their inner wild woman, and have it all. The man, the money, the magic, and all the miracles in between. No more self-sacrificing, self-abandoning, burnout, overwhelm, or denying your desires. Your full-out life is waiting, she says. Hashtag permission granted. After a decade of dancing with the Radio City Rockettes, years as a Nike master trainer, powerfully initiating a divorce, navigating body dysmorphia, and moving through her own battles with worthiness, judgment, and comparison, she has become a mindset ninja, opened her intuitive channels, and is a champion of women being their fully expressed and embodied selves. Sam's clients have left their jobs to travel the world, walked away from unfulfilling relationships, built side businesses into empires, ignited the fire in their intimate relationships, developed insane self-trust, all while taking care of themselves, mind, body, and spirit. Sam has built 2 multi-six-figure businesses, trained on mindset and energetics across the US and internationally. She hosts the Full Out podcast, regularly takes ballet and pole classes, and loves dropping an occasional F-bomb. She's currently expecting her first baby and is committed to showing women there's a different way to experience business, relationships, and motherhood. Full Out. You're going to love this episode. I can't wait to get into it with you. Welcome back to the Pelvic Pulse podcast, you guys. I have the beautiful Sam Harvey with me, who yeah, you're just a special human. Bio is obviously before this, so they kind of know a little bit about you. But why don't you tell everyone how we know each other, how our lives intersected in all the ways?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I'm so excited to be here, to be chatting with you. It's such an honor. So thank you for having me. And what's so wild is that you had been in my atmosphere for a while. We didn't personally know one another, but someone recommended you to me. And then my neighbor was one of your friends. And there were just so many connections. I think really a couple years until we actually met. And then I found myself pregnant, and my midwife was like, hey, you are a professional dancer. You should really see a pelvic floor PT prior to giving birth just to see what's going on and see what kind of support you might need. And I was like, I know exactly who I'm going to call. And I was so grateful and fortunate that we lived in the same town. I was able to see you in real life and get into your world. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Sam. I'm so glad that we had that opportunity too. Like, I'm glad I was in the ethers, I guess, in the connections, and that it landed in real life for sure. I mean, I'm
Well,
so grateful that yeah, that you already knew of me, I guess, and then that we actually did some really amazing work together.
Well, and I think what was so special about being in your space and having your support was that, I knew other pelvic floor PTs in the area. I knew, this was not something wild and crazy to me, although I had never worked with anyone that did pelvic health or like women's health in that way. But what I love specifically about you is that you had the energetic connection that was so important to me, that I know it was so beyond my physical body or what was happening, internally, but it was also the energetic piece. And so given my journey, I've gone through a lot of stuff with my body, with my energy, and having you be able to hold was just so special. And then I moved. I moved like 6 weeks after we met, maybe 8 weeks after we met. And I'm so sad that I don't get to see you in person, but
I know, but we're still
I feel all the
connected.
work.
Yeah.
We are.
I feel like you learned a lot in those 8 weeks, however long it actually was. And oh my God, I'm so grateful that I got to hold for you and be a small sliver of this ginormous part of your journey. I mean, it's already been a ginormous journey, I think, for you. Like you just mentioned, there have just been so many things. And I guess, if you wanted to kind of start with maybe kind of keeping it connected to the body for now. But yes, the energetics absolutely have everything to do with why I think we were able to do the work we did, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I guess what feels really like alive for you and prevalent to share right off the bat to I guess lay the foundation for coming into this pregnancy with the openness to even want to, or just, leaning into that yes, I guess, of seeing a pelvic PT.
Yeah.
Is that a really
Mm.
convoluted long question?
Well, I was a professional dancer for a zillion years in New York City and LA. So I always had a connection to my body, my physical body. But I think that coming from that background, it was always from the outside in. I was always trying to push my body to fit a certain weight range, to fit a costume size, to make it fit whatever role I needed it to fit. So I have a history of that, getting judged for my body at auditions, literally getting weighed in, measured, all of that. And then I also had a huge fitness background where I was in fitness competitions and I was a trainer and I worked for some really big companies. And so I was really enthralled with how can I shift my body? And again, it was this outside in approach. And so I always knew that when I was going to get pregnant eventually, I always knew that I was going to have children. I was so excited about the experience of what it would be like to have something growing in my body, like the biomechanics of it, the feeling of it, the experience of it on top of all of the energetic expansion of stepping into motherhood and what was available there. But what I think was really specific leading up to the journey is that I went through this divine feminine awakening in the like 2 to 3 years before getting pregnant. And that started really opening up my ability to start working with my body from the inside out. So,
Mm.
really deeply loving myself, really deeply honoring the magic that was really within me, connected to my power, my intuition, my confidence, and all of these things. And so, as I stepped into pregnancy, it was, how can I, number one, support myself? How can I feel better? How can I feel my best? How can I support a home birth? How can I support the most natural process? And also, what do I like physically need to do? And I'm huge on getting support. I'm huge on learning from people that have zones of genius that are outside of mine. And so thinking about pelvic PT, I'll be honest, was intimidating. I'm like, oh my God, someone's gonna like be in my zhuzh and in my stuff, and like, oh my gosh, labia, vagina, like what are these words? You know what I mean? Like I had started really diving into that work in the last like couple of years and yoni steaming and, being able to really connect with my ancestors and with my hand on my yoni, like all of this. And adding someone else into the process really was intimidating. And so I also knew there was an area for growth. And so being able to, again, find you, having this be your zone of genius, knowing, you were referred and really being able to create that environment where I felt so safe, so protected. I was super curious about what would this do for me? And again, how can I approach this from the inside out? And I think that's really part of what we did, or a lot of what we did was like, really, what does my body need? What does baby need? What do I get to honor? What do I get to release? What do I get to soften? What do I get to really be with without needing to shift anything and just being open to whatever magic came through?
Yeah. Ugh, you just named so many beautiful things. Yeah, I love all of that, like leading up to this moment where I felt like even in our first session, you were just already open. And even if it was intimidating, like I think you shared that. Like
I
this was the
did.
first time that you were doing something remotely like this, but also acknowledging that what we do here is so different than maybe like a typical clinical pelvic PT.
Totally.
Like our sessions were so beautiful, and it was just all about being in the moment and being with what is happening right now in the body. And having that feedback, I think, is pretty valuable for people. At least that's what they tell
Hmm.
me.
Yeah, I mean, truly, and I'm sure that most of your people would have a similar experience to me is like maybe they've done some work, maybe they haven't, but the only other experience of having someone in your space is either a partner or a gynecologist. Like I had never had, an experience in that way. And so I think that was very much like, well, here we go. I'm jumping in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What would you say, I guess, because you phrased a bunch of these questions, right? Like what do I have to be with? What do I have to soften? What do I need to do for support? Can you answer some of those questions, like your own questions here? Because I feel like
Oh, yeah.
during that process, like you were in your second trimester,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I would love to hear your inner experience said out loud again. Obviously, we've covered this in person before, but um, obviously the first trimester is a little cray cray for some people. Just
Yeah, it was wild.
yeah. Like maybe why don't we start with that? Can you share like the learning of that you were pregnant, how that first
Yeah.
trimester was, what were you, yeah, all the things.
Yeah, totally. It's so interesting because I'm curious about what my recollection will be now that I'm in my third trimester and like very close to the end, just being able to look back on it versus being in it.
Yeah.
So the first trimester, we got really, well, I'm gonna say we were lucky, and also I had a lot of support and intention around getting pregnant. So we got pregnant very fast on our second month trying. I say lucky, but also I'm gonna take a little bit of credit there to really honor what my partner and I did leading up to it, our
Mm.
mindset, our energy, our food, our health, all of that. And it was wild because I had been in a lull. My business had kind of slowed down a little bit. Things were feeling really slow. I was moving through a lot of things. I had recently, about 5 months prior, gotten an explant. So I knew that my implants were no longer in alignment with this chapter. And so I had an explant prior to that. And it was just a season of recovery, of healing, of quiet. And I started picking up crazy momentum over the summer. I had hosted a retreat. I had VIP one-on-ones. I was performing in a show. I mean, I was traveling. I was all over the place. And at the same time, found out I was pregnant. So my first trimester, I was on a plane every other week. I was hosting an event. I was leading, guiding, and it was the busiest experience while simultaneously feeling not wonderful. I did feel nauseous often. I was really working with my energy. Like it was a challenge. Um, Leading up to that portal from first trimester into second trimester, I really felt that liminal space of not physically and outwardly, or not outwardly being pregnant, but feeling all of these shifts happening and not feeling great. And it wasn't really until around 14 weeks that I started feeling better. So, as we feel free to jump in if you want me to
No, you can keep
go
going.
for
This
it.
is great.
Okay, great. And so what I have found is that each trimester there was a portal that shifted. It was like an initiation that I needed to walk through moving into each trimester. So second trimester, I finally started feeling better. I finally wanted more food. I mean, I was like surviving on everything bagels and cream cheese and like crackers,
Yeah.
which is like not typical for me at all. And fruit, tons of fruit. And moving into the second trimester, I was also preparing for a giant cross country move. I was returning back to Maryland where I grew up, but I had not lived there since I was 17. So it'd been like 17, no, 20 years since I had lived at home. So it was a really big experience of coming home and choosing what didn't quite make sense logically, but in my soul and my body was the right choice. And so simultaneously, I start working with you and I'm like, hey, let's see what's in here. Let's figure out what, what does my body need? And again, it was really from a structural perspective of like, I don't want to tear and I'm doing a home birth and like, what do I need to know? But as soon as we dropped in, I remember this really, really clearly. Um, as we were doing our work together, we were noticing there was like some tension and there was some tightness in certain areas. And you had asked me what was coming through. Was there an emotion? Was there a feeling? And I had such a clear, intuitive feeling and knowing that this was related to some ancestral trauma in my family lineage that I had been holding on to that I knew wasn't mine. And being able to be with that, something that I've been working to release out of my body for years and years and years and working with different healers and people, but for you to be able to access it and for me to be able to hold that and just witness it was so powerful. And it was related to some sexual trauma. And what was so powerful and beautiful in this realization for me, I'm going to get woo woo here, is that I am having a boy. And what I feel is that this boy, this man, this divine masculine is literally in my body to support the transmutation of this trauma, of this lineage of women not being able to be safe around men, of us feeling unable to trust the male and the masculine. And as I am going to birth this little human, this little soul, he is going to help my body release it and like fully, fully, finally take it out of my system so that I no longer carry it around. And that felt so big and so huge and so powerful. And I wouldn't have had that awareness had we not done that particular hands on work. And had I not had the awareness and the openness to really access what was coming through.
I had full body shivers when you were talking about all of that, but
Yeah.
specifically with just how this babe has this already like this kind of divine karma
Yeah.
for healing for this part of your ancestry and for you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and even though you weren't personally experiencing it, like you do experience it in different ways, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wild, 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 wild. And thank you for sharing all those little details and nuggets because I
So
think a
special.
lot of people maybe they don't see their body as being kind of like a map for the energetics or as like maybe they're not aware of epigenetics.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I appreciate you naming it so specifically because I remember that so vividly to my touch too. Like it was right side attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was on the right side. It was on the masculine side. It was
Yeah.
it was so specific. It
Yeah.
was wild.
What was
And I remember
also
feeling just the emotion just come through and be like, oh,
yeah.
like, and I know enough now. I'm like, this isn't mine, but I am the one in my lineage that is breaking this. Like, I talk a lot about being the chain breaker and being the person willing to go first and doing the healing for our 7 generations past and 7 generations future. And I really fully believe that our work together was one of those key links in unlocking something massive.
Absolutely. That's so cool. That feels really good to hear too.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even in the follow-up sessions after that was like, I mean, we got to just also experience just some support and care and education after having acknowledged that piece.
Yeah.
That is a big foundational piece, right? Um, but yeah, it was just so beautiful to see that and feel that with you. And okay, I want to talk to you about this transition
Yes, let's talk about it.
because to me, and I mean, yeah, you can get specific, I guess, with the timing of like when you guys moved, when you maybe that was the portal for walking into the third trimester, right? But
Yeah.
um I feel like something just to lay out there for everyone, right? Is that to me, your pelvic bowl with the pelvic floor, pelvic diaphragm at the bottom, like it is foundational. It is home for the rest of the chakras, right? It's like chakra number one is root.
Yeah.
And your root is maybe where you grew up. You can think of it like that, or just where you come from. But yeah, let's talk about this transition and how even in modes of transition, how does one care for themselves, especially at the tail end of a pregnancy?
Yeah. Yeah. So second trimester was really focused on this big giant move from San Diego. And I want to preface this too by saying I was a pro dancer in New York. I lived in New York for a zillion years. I lived in LA for a zillion years. I lived in San Diego, like metropolitan, big energy, access to everything, connection to friends, like just so much life and opportunity. And to willingly step into a transition to move not to necessarily where I grew up. I moved about 3 hours away into a small rural town that I just didn't realize it was going to be that in the middle of nowhere when we agreed to it. Like it just so happened with the way that like my family stuff worked out that we were going to land at this particular house and get this support. But the transition was insane. Now, second trimester, I was actually preparing for another show. I danced at 5.5, almost 6 months pregnant on stage, which was a huge dream of mine after retiring from my like professional career with Rockettes. Being able to dance on a small stage in San Diego was amazing. And leading up to the move, we were selling everything. We took one trailer across the country. I flew with my little dog, and my partner drove across the country with his best friend and our big dog. And leading up to the move, I felt the swirling energy of like, holy shit, this is a lot, but I felt solid. I really felt solid, but I think I had all of my anchors. I had people supporting me like you. I know some of our sessions were really just like body work, just to drop in the opportunity to have hands on in a way that felt so like nourishing and good and juicy,
Mm.
and access to all of the other things that made me feel like me: ballet classes, going to the gym, being able to walk on the beach, being able to have access to my favorite foods, favorite grocery stores, favorite everything. And once I got here, it was culture shock.
Mm.
It it was challenging. I went from the ocean, palm trees, San Diego, living in a postcard, to winter, November, on the East Coast with trees and cold and a new house that wasn't mine, cohabitating with my mom half of the time. Um, Moving away from everything that I knew, a community that I had built, not having a dance studio, not having my shishi high-end gym that I loved teaching at, not having access to things like something as simple for me. I was drinking raw milk chai lattes. It was something that I loved having. And here in Maryland, raw milk is illegal. That's a whole conversation we won't talk about, but sourcing natural food and the things that I knew my body needed and this baby was craving. Um, was really challenging. And so the last 6 to 7 weeks was transition, navigating. How do we integrate my dogs with my mom's dogs? How do I find ways to take care of myself? What does that look like? And I would be lying if I said this part was easy. Like I got hit in the face by a 2x4. Like it was a challenge. It was a challenge. And so honestly, it required all of my tools. I've been in the coaching space for almost 10 years now. And so I couldn't necessarily like push my way through. I had to be with my feelings. And I think that's something that I have learned and I talk about often is being able to be with your feelings, being able to cry and release and emote and not feel like there's anything wrong with you for feeling less than stellar. Um, so being able to be open with my partner and have honest conversations around like, what the fuck did we do? And like, am
Mm.
I going to be okay? And what's happening? Being able to have honest conversations with my family of like, hey, what are the boundaries here? What are we looking at? What does this mean? Having a plan, but not having a plan, being unattached to the outcome and knowing how we want to feel and being like, great, what do we get to do to feel that way?
Mm.
I started working out more here in a different way. I danced less and was strength training more. So my body actually feels better now. And on this side of the 6 to 7 week transition, I finally feel like we've landed. Energetically, we've landed. Physically, my belly has now really popped out and we we feel better. We feel good.
Mm. Thank you for naming all those things. Ugh, I guess where I want to, I guess, focus on is was it just basically like, okay, no, this is how I want to say it. I think people's expectations, especially when they say make big transitions like this, and you can apply this to anything, right? Any kind of transition, a big cross country move, a next city over move, I want to, I guess it's just like, it sounds like you honored your stuff here. Like you honored your place that you had, your community that you had, your home, the just weather and the environment here, so beautifully.
Mhm.
And I think, so I was going to say the expectation to once you get somewhere, it's just going to like fall into place pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. Like
No.
maybe that's my projection or perspective on how other people might see a transition like that. Like, oh, as soon as you're in your hometown and you're going to be next to your mom, or your mom's going to be
Sure.
available for you, it's going to be fine. But those 6 to 8 weeks, I'm glad that you named that exact kind of time frame, because that's reality, right? Like it
Yeah.
takes, after like literally uprooting and then getting back down into a place that you haven't been in for 20 years is like
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty incredible.
I think that I'm a go-getter. I want to get shit done. I'm like, great, we moved, let's unpack. I want everything out. I want and it nothing lined up like that. Like nothing, like everything that could take longer took longer. Everything. I mean, there were so many things where I was really invited into surrendering and softening again. And that has been one of my lifetime lessons to really soften my masculine and really invite the feminine to be able to be in the flow. Because the more that I force, the more that I want to control, because that feels like it's safe, quote unquote, in my body,
Mhm.
the more challenging it is. But this again, I'm so grateful that I'm having babies at this point in my journey. I'm 38. I'm so grateful that I made the move at this point in my life and pregnancy because I have these tools and I have this awareness of this invitation to surrender and release control. And being able to just honor that and go, okay, there's another opportunity for me to surrender. Great. Here's another opportunity for me to let go of what I think it's supposed to look like or how it's supposed to feel, quote unquote, and just be with what is. Here's another opportunity for me to let go of all of these external things that I think make me me and resource or insource that internal power, knowing and reorienting with myself that it does come from my body. It comes from my higher power, God, source, cosmos, whatever you believe in. And so it's almost like all of these external things needed to be taken away. And I had really got I threw myself into this vortex of like, you're coming back to yourself. And that can't be rushed. And we add on top of it this pregnancy thing where every single day my body's different. Every single day my body's growing. Am I going to get stretch marks? Am I going to feel sick? Am I going to feel great? Am I going to feel tired? Like what are the expectations? Can I still do everything I love doing? And again, letting go of the outcome, letting go of what it looks like, I think is this huge preparation for motherhood. And I'm not there yet, so I have no idea, but I can see from this higher perspective that I need these 9 months of gestation to really soak up these lessons and what's available here because it's priming me and prepping me for this next chapter.
Absolutely. I feel like if you want to see it this way, the pregnancy in and of itself is a giant transition because, like you said,
1000%.
every day is different. Your body's going to feel different. The baby's going to do something different. It's all different.
Yeah.
And oh, I feel like you have this beautiful opportunity. Like, again, if you wanted to look at it like this, um, but also because like you're back home, there's almost a just the environment of your maiden and
Mm.
getting to honor your maiden, grieve her too. Because, like you said, like, yeah,
Mhm.
you're coming back to yourself, but you are stretching into growing into this role of mother.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a big role. But
And it's something that, when I moved to New York and then I moved to LA, I always said, I don't know how I'm going to be able to have kids without my mom. Like I have no
mm,
idea how. And I was married and divorced in my 20s. And I remember back then just being like, well, I don't know how I could do this without my mom. And just, I always knew, like my system knew at some point mom was going to be connected, but I just assumed that she would come out to California. And
Mm.
the way that things worked out, it did not work out that way. And it worked out perfectly. Like it is actually perfect and great. Um, but it's like my system knew that that was going to happen. And so there's also this really big through line of healing the maternal lineage. Like the time that I have now spent with my mom, the time I have now spent with my grandmom in just the 6 to 8 weeks that I've been here is so different. Like it is really healing our relationship as I am also stepping into this space. And it's so beautiful and it's so much bigger than I even think I understand in this current moment. But it has been just the biggest invitation.
Would you be able to name or share an example like of how the relationship is shifting? Like in the time spent
Yeah.
together, I'm assuming you guys are having conversations about motherhood, parenthood, all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think something as simple as just asking my grandmom, like, how did you give birth? Like, oh, you were in the hospital. Did you have medication? Did you not? What was that like? Talking to my mom about what her birth experiences were with my sister and I, and being able to bond on that level, like that feels like one thing. But then there's a lot deeper, more intimate and vulnerable stuff around, when we were talking about moving back, it was like, well, we don't want to get into a lease right away because we don't know where we want to be and we don't want to buy anything because we have no idea what we're going to do and how long we're going to stay and what that's going to look like. And being able to be vulnerable enough to say like, hey, we're going to need support.
Mhm.
What does that look like for us? And coming from my mom being a single mom and there being some really interesting relationship dynamics and some really challenging things where I took on the perfectionist, the overdoer, the like parent child relationship was flip flopped when I was younger, like a lot of old history, being able to let go of that history and say, hey, I be the child again? Like, can you support and take care of me in this way? Um, can you honor me in my wishes to have birth in this certain way without, medicalized, fear-based opinions? Can you support me with this type of food, this type of nourishment, this type of support? Um, were conversations that um, were really new for us. So there was a lot of healing that came through on that front too.
I could already almost imagine for myself if I were going to have some of those conversations, like
It's big,
big, big. That's big time. That's
big.
so, that's a life-changing opportunity right there to be able
Even
to,
even in like talking about my birth, saying, "Hey, like mom, I want you there, but this is the role that I see you in." Like
yeah.
I'm not available for anxiety. I'm not available
Mhm.
for concern. And I know it's all out of like love and, her wanting to make sure I'm okay and good. I'm like, this is the energetic boundary. I want you to be there. And this is what I need from you. Just being able for me to use my voice to set a boundary, to ask for what I want. It's a new level of embodiment for me in a space that I've never had before. And for her to be like, oh, okay, yeah,
Right.
okay, great.
Yeah.
And last thing, for me to be able to receive the support and receive the love.
Yeah. And
Because
that,
for a long time, I pushed it off. I was like, I
mm,
don't know if I trust it. Is it going to be there? Is it not going to be there? All the layers of childhood and divorced parents and all of the things. Like, it's been fucking fascinating.
that's a great way to put it. It's fucking fascinating because it's like, like you said, it's another embodiment piece. It's another aspect of the feminine embodiment, right? To be able to ask for what you desire. Okay,
Mm,
I'm working on this with my coach right now, or like we just had our last call. Um, and it's just fascinating to even like think about it through those lenses, but like to ask cleanly for the desire, being available even for a no if they can't.
yeah.
But then if there is a yes, like a true yes, and the person you're asking can show up honestly, in honest support, and
Mm,
then being open to fully receiving that is such a beautiful practice.
to actually receive it. Yeah.
And receive it, can you like receive it gracefully too, right? Like I feel like, oh, there's so
Yeah.
many ways to receive something, even
Yeah.
guiltily receiving something, right? I don't know.
Mm.
I'm just naming some
Mhm.
random things, but
Mhm.
uh
And
yeah.
trusting it too. I think that's another big thing. Like trusting the receiving of it. Trusting
Yes.
them to give it if they're able to, and not for me, not taking on any sort of codependent past
Yeah.
patterning. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so you are going to be with your midwife at the home birth,
Yes,
right?
I am.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so curious. Can you, if you're open to sharing the vision,
Yeah.
because I'm in awe of how you're able to share with your mom how you see her, like what her role
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if a lot of people actually know, right? Like, what could that look like where if she's not paid support, like a midwife or a doula, like what would her job be? And then what's your partner's job going to be? Like, where
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by that aspect of birth too, like where you see everyone
Yeah.
being, you know?
Yeah. Well, it is really special because we are staying at her house. So she has a condo closer to DC, and then we're in this house. So this is technically her house. I'm like, hey, number one, can I can I give birth in your house in this
Yeah.
particular room over here that has big windows and like looks out into the trees? That's where I would like to give birth. So that
Oh.
just in and of itself was like, hey, here's what I'm gonna do. Now, granted, I have always danced to the beat of my own drum. I've always been like a little rebel. I've always done my own thing. So this was not out of left field for my mom. This was like,
Mm.
of course Sam would choose this. Like, all right.
I love it.
um, but the vision really, it's interesting because I love the idea of like visualization and everything, but I actually don't have a really clear visualization of what it will look like. And also, there's an invitation for how do I want to feel? And that's really what I'm focused on.
Okay, okay.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so I'm like I love all the manifestation stuff where it's like see the exact outline of what you want, and just for me it's more about feeling. Again, it comes back to my body, it comes back to probably my human design, it comes back to like all of those things, but for me to feel it in my system. So, what I'm really clear on is first certain boundaries, and that are like her husband and her two dogs do not get to be here. Like it's
Mm.
just too many bodies, too much energy. So I want a quiet space. I want to feel fully supported. I feel this happening at night. I feel it happening in just a really sacred and intimate space. So I see a big tub in this particular room. I feel like we'll have an altar with, some crystals, Archangel Michael, like Mother Mary. Like we'll see who decides to like be on that altar with me. And I when I visualize it, I actually do feel like the incense is burning, the music is
Mm.
on, twinkle lights are happening, and me fully trusting whatever my body needs and whatever this baby needs in order for us together to bring him earthside. Um, I read the book Spirit Babies years ago, way
Mm.
before I was thinking about having babies, but I was called to it. And I remember there was a particular thing in it where he was talking about how the mom's soul, and this is my recollection of it at least, the mom's soul actually goes into the ethers to meet the baby soul, and together they come through.
Mm.
And the more that I've researched and leaned into what birth is, I know for me it's going to be a very spiritual experience. And I've heard that there's again, you're in this liminal space where it's like an altered reality that you experience. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that's like probably my soul going to get him. But the teachers that I've learned that from don't have that languaging. So for me, I definitely see this, whatever this soul journey is that me and Soul Baby get to do together. Um, and then my partner Carlos being that like number one support. And that's been something that I've had to kind of say to my mom, like, he is the one that's there. He is number one. And then my mom's job is to hold the space and to take care of the dogs, our two dogs, to make us tea if we need tea, to, support midwife and doula and just, you know, manage the space. If we need more towels, if we need more this, if we need hot water, like whatever that is. Again, I don't fully know. And I think that that's also been key is giving her a role and giving her a job so that she knows exactly what to do. And I've heard that's the same thing for birth partners. Sometimes they need to be told what to do because
Mhm.
if you don't grow up in that space or if you're not really around it a lot, it can be scary. It can be uncomfortable. Um, And then I've involved my mom in my midwife appointments. She was able to come to my appointment last month and just be there and be a part of the experience. Um, and I think that really me sharing my vision with her is what's been so exciting. Like she's so excited to be a part of it.
I feel her being, if she had a title, guardian of the space.
I love it.
Like not Guardians of the Galaxy, but maybe.
No, she's like the
She's a guardian.
matriarch of the space.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because my midwife is young and my doula is
Mm,
young. And so
mm.
she really, ooh, I just got chills. She does hold that energy.
Yeah. Oh,
That's like juicy.
that is so juicy. Oh my gosh. That's making me think of this. I led a retreat a couple years back, but it was me and this other woman, young woman who is a doula, and we don't have children. And we hosted this mom's retreat, like this little day getaway for a
Yeah.
few hours. And so we were hosting these moms, and we actually had the doula's friend, who's a crone, like a straight
Yeah.
up matriarch crone, long gray hair, like petite, cute woman, so wise. And she did singing bowls for the moms.
Yeah.
It was so cool to have all three there, you know?
Yeah. That's so
So,
cool.
so special.
And I do think there's like an invitation for my mom to really own that and step into that.
Mm.
Because my mom's like young, she's cool, she's
Yeah.
fun. Like there's definitely like that young energy.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that she feels
No, no, it's okay. I yeah, I think that's incredible. Whether it doesn't even matter the age, right? It is actually, it is an energy that you can hold and embody. And if you can tap into that, like just wise woman who has been there before, you know? Like you don't,
totally.
yeah, you don't need to be of certain age to be a matriarch, or I like to call them, I don't even know if she's in menopause or not, but or past it, but
Yeah.
a menopausal maven,
Ooh, that's sassy.
right? Just
I like it.
someone who knows through embodied wisdom,
Yeah.
life experience.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that's, I am so excited for you and this little vision of yours, this feeling. I love that actually you tapped into how you want your body to feel and what you sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so I it's been interesting because I actually have read like zero pregnancy books. Like I'm normally such a like learner and I want to soak up things, but this process I've actually had the most highly sensitive discernment where I have actually felt full resistance to reading these books or to having these suggestions. Like, there's been such knowing within me that my body knows exactly what I need to know, that I can trust what I'm trusting, that I can really follow that. And so I think that's been a fascinating awareness that I've come through of like, oh, wow, I'm actually not interested. There was like one book, actually, the one that you suggested. I was like, oh, yeah, this one's amazing. I'm finally reading it and it's great. But being able to really trust in me, trust in baby, trust in body, trust in ancestry, trust in the biology, trust in whatever is right for my soul's journey and this baby's soul journey, really being able to surrender to that. But then also deciding that I don't necessarily need it to look a certain way. Like I'm so cautious. Like, do I want to listen to these birth affirmations where it's like, this is
Mm.
speedy and fast, or like, I'm really strong and powerful, but like, do I have to be strong and powerful because it's going to be really hard? Or like, I'm like
Mm.
not available for any of that. So I'm really sitting with the energy of whatever is supposed to happen for all of us involved to have the most beautiful experience is what I'm here for. And I think that's also coming back to the expectations, just letting go of the expectations, knowing what I desire, and then taking my hands off the wheel.
Right, right. That's like the big piece of surrender and trust that you named earlier. And
Yeah.
I am glad you named that too, with discernment and what you're choosing to take in. And I'm curious because I feel like I haven't gotten to talk to anyone I mean, I have one other pregnant client right now, but I haven't really talked to her a lot about it. And I feel like for a woman in this day and age right now to, I guess, navigate social media, to navigate all the resources, podcasts, books, like YouTube, there's just so much out there that you could potentially take in, and you're choosing not to. Yet, people, if you know, it's unsolicited, even.
Yes.
I feel like you've talked about this on your social media, which I'm really glad you're bringing awareness to how people are to a current woman who is pregnant.
Yeah, girl.
Like,
Well, the like discernment piece has been interesting, and then I want to come back to like the unsolicited feedback and advice.
yeah.
The discernment has been wild. Like I am a go-getter. I am someone who says when I'm going to commit to something, I'm going to follow through. I'm like hell or high water, I'm fucking doing it. Like I make shit happen. And this year that has not been the case. I have really, I'm thinking of a particular example. I was in a year-long mastermind, and it's this like priestess mastermind where we're like going through shadow work and we're accessing this and energy and blah blah blah, blah. And once I got pregnant, I was just like, I can't go to this. Like I am not interested in being in the WhatsApp. I'm not interested in being on the live Zooms. I go to some of the ceremonial, things, but I was really fighting this peace within me. I'm like, what is going on? Because my former perfectionist and like do it right girl within me was like, I'm not doing it right. Like I said I was committed to this thing and now I'm not. And what's happening? And I actually brought it up in the space with the other women saying, like, hey, here's what's real for me. And someone reflected back to me in the most incredible way. She's like, girl, you're growing a nervous system right now.
Mm.
And when she said that, I was like, oh my God, you're right. She's like, maybe this is exactly what you need to not be in this work, to not be in that meditation, to not be in this group of whatever kind of work that we're doing. And just trust when you want to show up that you're getting exactly what you need. And former me would have been like, man, I signed up for this year-long thing and I invested and I'm not getting everything I need out of it. But like actually, the growth that I was able to choose myself and listen to that discernment was beyond the money that I invested. Like it was such a cool opportunity. So that discernment
Absolutely.
piece is like mind blowing.
Fire.
Yeah. And then as far as the social media and just discernment or not discernment, the social media and people's opinions, oh, I mean, I've always had people's opinions. Like people love to give an opinion, a thought, a feeling about what I'm doing with my life. It has been something that I have navigated forever and ever and ever. I also think I'm bringing up human design again, but it's part of my 3-5 generator.
Oh,
Like
yes.
people like
Speaking,
to project.
they do. They really do. And I feel like the three, if you know what a three is, it's all trial and error or trial and learn
Yeah.
again. It's not even an error. It's just you learn what doesn't work for you and you get to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what's recently come through is, I mean, first of all, I think every pregnant woman kind of talks about it where people are like, oh, just wait until, or are you sleeping yet? Da-da-da-da-da. And like they share their story or they share their birth story, their traumatic birth story, where you're like, hold the phone, like I'm not available for this. Like if you think about like neuroplasticity and visualization and manifestation, I'm like, I want zero information about your traumatic birth experience right now. Give me 6 months and maybe I can hold that, or maybe I don't ever want to hear about it. But in particular, it just shows me how much work there is to do with women and
Mhm.
the understanding of what it means to actually support someone. And I learned this many years ago when I stepped into the coaching space and was actively learning and seeking and all of that is there's a difference between holding and witnessing, which is deep support, versus trying to fix, trying to make someone feel better, trying to put your own opinions on it or say something because you love them, but it's not actually in service to their highest good or their soul's journey. And pregnancy has really brought that out of people. Even the
Mm.
most well-intentioned, amazing friends that I have are saying some shit that I'm like, girl, I am not available for that. Cancel, cancel. I am sorry you went through that, or I'm sorry that was your experience. And I really see you in that. We're not going to do that here.
Fair. I think that's totally fair. And each woman has to figure out what that looks like, what that can feel like for them, right?
Yeah.
And it comes
Yeah.
from weird places, like really weird, random off
And I think
social,
it's
but
totally out of
also
love too. I do think it's a lot of it
it
is
is
out of love. It's so high intention and well intentioned. And I think it's a lack of awareness of what our words, how our words actually impact other people.
totally, totally. Even it, what's the unintentional impact?
Mm. Hmm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
our words are
Totally.
powerful. And your story is so your story. You know what I mean? Like there, I mean, there are some beautiful spaces out there that are specifically, I guess,
Yeah.
just to highlight a resource for people in case they, only share with their close friends who may or may not be available to hear their story. There are circles where you can share your birth story, traumatic or not.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that, even in of itself, can also just be like I mean, you're currently growing a nervous system in this way through pregnancy.
Yes.
After giving birth, a potential way for anyone listening, I guess, is to sit with other people's stories and sit with your own. I think it's part of like, it's if you're someone who, I guess, shares your birth story unsolicitedly to someone who's pregnant or not, because you just want them to hear it. But I think it might be a good reflection to do is there any discomfort with your own story and any discomfort that someone else's story brings up for you?
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like something to be very, very compassionate about.
Yeah.
I listen to stories all day.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of stories.
You
Um,
do.
and they're, I mean, I have my own practices to keep my energy and my
Yeah.
field
Sure.
clean.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I'm also not pregnant.
Yeah, it's honestly, and I could not have understood it until being on this side. And it's showing me so much about, even some of the coaches that I'm working with who are the most incredible humans but don't have children,
Mm,
even some of the things that they have, suggested or intuited or felt, I'm like, girl, no, like no, like that this does not work for me. Like I was in the first trimester and one of my coaches was like, well, I feel like you really need some like nourishing food. And she starts talking about all this food. I'm like, I can barely get down a cracker right now. Like, no. And it was so well intentioned, but
yeah.
it's showing me how what the gaps are in the
Mm,
space and like potential for where my business gets to go.
mm,
But then also it's showing me how much I've grown and how much I know. Like I had a girlfriend who's also pregnant right now. Her due date was a couple days ago actually.
ooh,
And I saw her and she was like, yeah, so the update at 38 weeks is that the baby flipped and she's breech. And in Maryland, you can't do breech home birth. And there were all these
mm,
things. And I I guess I responded with like, oh, okay. So what are you gonna do? Like it was such a like a that was just my quick reaction. And I will never forget her response. She just her whole body softened and she was like, oh
mm.
my God. Thank you so much for not going, oh my God, are you okay? Da, 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 and like making it worse for her. My neutrality in it, and I really was like not even conscious to it. That was just how I responded.
Yeah.
Um, she was like, that was the most supportive thing you could have said. She's like,
Mm,
she's like, I just feel held versus, oh my gosh, doomsday, something's happening or something's wrong.
right.
Um,
Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
so, that's a really, really good lesson. And very interesting also to consider, right? What that is and what that what you could make it
yeah,
mean
yeah.
about the
She's like,
baby, about you, about the birth and the outcome and da 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 da.
yeah. Oh yeah, and she's navigating all of that. All of that. And
Yeah.
it comes back to, anytime I think about my partner, I think about my clients, I think about my friends, I think about, really supporting anyone. If they come to you with a big feeling or a big thing happening in their life, I love to ask the question, wow, how does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Versus me going immediate into fix mode or problem solver or coach mode or whatever that might be. And that's something that's been huge in my relationship too.
Mm,
Of like, we ask like, is this a solution or is this a support? Like, what do you need right now? Do you need a
love
hug
that.
or do you need some conversation and some solutions?
I like the way you phrase it because it can be a lot to be like, do you need me to help you fix this problem, or do you need to just vent it out? It's clean or simple with
Solution or support? What do
uh,
you need?
yes, yes. Good for you guys. I love that for
Yeah.
you. I mean, it's so easy, I guess, like to slip right into like a coach or a fix it or just like your go-getter
Yeah.
energy. And I'm the same way. I'm like, I can solve problems pretty quickly if you ask. But
Yeah.
I've learned my lesson on
Yeah.
over and
Or ask
over.
permission too.
Yeah,
Like,
for
hey,
sure.
I do have some thoughts and I'm like really inspired by this. Like, or hey, I'm getting some downloads for you. Do you want them? And then the person has
Mm-hmm.
the full permission to say, oh my gosh, yeah, like, what is that? Or no, I'm good. I'm in my own process right now. And again, I feel like it comes back to using your voice, asking for what you want, asking for permission. And I think those are skills that really support how we relate to one another and how you relate to yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's, I was gonna like end with a question that was like, what would you, I guess, if you were being or you were giving unsolicited advice to another pregnant woman, what would you say? But that feels like exactly it. I think it's like just about
Mm.
being in the practice of sitting with what it is that you desire, what you need, what you don't want, what you don't need, bringing it to life.
My unsolicited advice is what I basically preach online in life, how I live my life, and that is permission granted. You have full permission to create the life you want. You have full permission to experience pregnancy the way that you want to. You have full permission to ask for what you want from your provider, from your partner, from your family. You have full permission to do whatever, be whatever, have whatever. And it really is an invitation to step into your truth and your knowing, to get quiet with yourself and say, what is it that I actually want? What do I actually want to experience? And then detach from the outcome. Because that's the other thing. We don't have control of what happens. It's being so committed to our desires and what we feel is possible, and then letting go and trusting, trusting, trusting.
Mic drop on that one. I I would love to hear, I guess, what the I guess immediate and maybe later stages postpartum might look like for you.
Yeah.
Because my closing question, I guess, would have been, how do you want people to reach out to you if they want to get in contact with you, learn more about you, da 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 da. But I'm assuming with holidays and everything kind of wrapping up from the year and being in this like later stage, third trimester coming
Yeah.
up, are you even available? Like,
Yeah. Oh
what do
my God. That's
you
that's that's such a great question. Yeah, and that's been a whole, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on that, but like
absolutely?
I've been navigating like what does happen with my work and
Yeah.
what is that going to look like? That feels like a whole separate conversation. But um right now it's very open and in flux, and I'm like trusting a lot of guidance that's coming through. So we are still going to be running my podcast, the Full Out Podcast, which is on Spotify, iTunes, Apple. And then I love connecting with people on social media. I'm on Instagram. That's where I like to hang out, at Samantha Joe Harvey. And if you are listening and you're like, hey, I'm like vibing with this, or I have any questions, I'm an open book. So send me a DM, ask me whatever you want to ask me. I would be happy to share with you, give you resources, like whatever that looks like. So Instagram, podcast. And then work wise, right now, it's been fascinating because a lot of my one-on-one clients are actually like falling, like they're complete. I'm saying they're like falling off, but it just, we happen to do it not intentionally, where a lot of the contracts are basically closing. So I'm keeping
Mm.
a few very uh small number of clients that we're going to each like navigate one-on-one what that looks like, and then everyone else gets to come hang out in my membership space, Club Full Out. And it has an online portal that has movement meditations, tapping into your chakras, your body, your higher self, your intentions. It has pep talks from me, so you get these little like spicy 2 to 3 minutes, like go after your fucking goals, and like here, let's do this, or like slow down and rest, like all of those. And then a bunch of mindset trainings, and online courses that I have there. So we're navigating the waters, and I still just love connecting with people. That is like
Yeah.
my thing. Again, I'm a 3-5, so I'm like, here's what I'm learning. Let me share it with you. Let me give you permission. Let me show you what's possible. And that is the one last thing. Can I throw one more quick thing in there?
Absolutely.
What I've been seeing online, particularly as a pregnant woman, and this will probably change in 6 months, but when we are in the throes of something challenging, I think it's really supportive to see other people going through the challenge. For example, early postpartum. I am seeing so many reels and conversations and things about the challenge of early postpartum and the challenge of being tired and the challenge of navigating business. And what's so interesting is that I can foresee being in that stage and going like, "Hey, this would be really supportive."
Mm.
But as someone who has not gotten there yet and someone who wants to create a different experience, that shit's not helpful. And so, one thing that's really big for me online and something that I'm really passionate about is yes, being in integrity and authentic, but also being the possibility for someone. I
Mm.
want to experience it differently. I believe that we can have it all. I believe that we can experience things in a different way. And just because our mom experienced something or society tells you something's going to be challenging or that it's not possible, that I would challenge that. And so part of what feels really real is showing what's possible, creating a different reality, and seeing who I get to become in the process. So if you want to follow along on that journey,
Yes,
let's connect.
I'll be there watching. I'll be there watching from afar. I mean, that's another really, really great point. It's, I'm glad that people are open to being vulnerable more on social media, with all the things. And, not but, and is there another potential? And that's something I actually questioned on one of my latest episodes with Dr. Kate. She had two very different postpartum experiences. Um, Very interesting timeline too, with living in the US and then living somewhere else. And
Ooh,
so she shares about that and like what she envisions for postpartum. Her and I click on that as well. Same with you, right? Like
yeah,
there is, I believe, I think we've kind of screwed with it in the past, right?
yeah,
But even further back, there are ancient ways of
yes,
supporting a mother, a new
yes,
mother. And there are lots of, again, resources on that. Maybe I think the book I sent to you or like
yes,
told you is
yep,
Fourth Trimester by Kimberly Ann
yep,
Johnson. Incredible. She does share about her story, which is what got her to write this book. And there's so many good nuggets in there. And I mean, I'm seeing these ancient traditions kind of making their way back into modern society. Like instead of having I mean, a couple different things you could do instead of, but you could do things in conjunction, right? A baby shower,
1000%.
whatever, a BB, like a baby Q, a barbecue with everyone, the whole village, whatever, men and women. You could do a blessing way, but I've seen instead of even some of these bigger shower experiences, it's actually like a nesting party and everyone brings these soups that they've made in their crock
Oh,
pots and everyone can just try all the soups or whatever and then you freeze the rest of it for the mother and partner or whatever,
that's amazing.
for them in those early stages where that food is
Yeah,
going to be so healing for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
um
And again, it's like ask for it. I will tell you, my last appointment with my midwife, she has these cards that you pull that are like conversation starters. And of course, I
mm,
pulled the ancestor card. She's like, in literally 20 years of doing this, I've never had a single person pull this card. I was like, naturally, it would be me. Of course, it's me. And somehow we started talking about, mom and grandma. But then I also had mentioned, my partner is Mexican. And there's this really beautiful tradition called it's like a closing of the bones ceremony. It happens
oh,
at the end of the fourth trimester. I'm like, it would be so cool to do that because my girlfriends, I have really magical girlfriends, but they live all over the world. And for me to have a baby blessing just isn't quite feasible at this point. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll do something like that. And she was like, well, you know that I trained right outside of Mexico, and I'm actually trained in how to do that ceremony. And I almost fell off my chair. Again, rural town in Maryland on the Eastern Shore. Never would have thought
wow.
that my midwife would be someone that could do that. She's like, yeah, let's talk about it. Like, let's figure it out. And so, again, if we ask for it, you just never know. You just never know.
Sam, I love that. I love that. The universe will drop these like beautiful surprises for you along the way if you just let it.
Yeah, and receive it.
Receive it. Oh my gosh. Well, you are just obviously such a gem, and I'm so so excited for you and this next stage
Thank
of
you.
your life, and yours and Carlos's and this baby's.
Yeah.
It's just pure magic, and I'm really again grateful that I got to be a small part of this journey that you're on. So
Oh,
thank you for being
thank you so
here.
much. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. I'm so grateful for you. You are incredible and magical and amazing. And just, I so appreciate you. Thank you.
I received that. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next time.